David Seymour.
Mr Speaker, I rise on behalf of the ACT Party in opposition to this bill. And let's just get a couple of pieces of evidence on the table. One is that smoking is really bad, and I don't think there's anyone in this House or anyone listening who's not aware of that. And the second piece of evidence from the only jurisdiction that we can really analyse as to the effectiveness of plain packaging legislation, Australia, comes from their post-implementation review, which, by the way, is a very good thing for countries to do when they make regulations. And what it told us is that over 3 years after plain packaging was introduced in Australia, there was a 2.2% decrease in smoking rates, part of a trend that had begun several decades earlier. And according to the very reputable economist or econometrician, that they employed to do this study, anywhere from 0.05 to 0.95% of that decrease in smoking could have been because of plain packaging. On average, they think that about 0.5% of Australians stopped smoking over that period because of plain packaging. So those are the facts that are not in dispute. At least 0.05% of Australians stopped smoking because of plain packaging laws. Well, those are the things that are not in dispute. What is in dispute is whether or not smoking cessation is the only value that New Zealand holds. And, Mr Speaker, I think that there are a number of other values that are important to New Zealand, including property rights and the right of a business to employ its brands. And some of the speakers earlier in this debate have said we have the proof that this legislation will be effective because none of the tobacco companies want it. Well, of course none of them want it, any more than political parties would want to have their brands removed so that they could not compete with each other. Mr Speaker, every business wants to have its own brand so that it can compete with other businesses. So it's simply not true to say that tobacco companies are worried that there will be a reduction in smoking. What they're worried about is they're worried that there will be a reduction in their ability to compete with other tobacco companies. They are worried that what they're going to find is that the tobacco companies that succeed under this legislation are those who are prepared to compete on price only. So it's perfectly understandable that the tobacco companies would be opposed to having their property rights confiscated.
Good.
Mr Speaker, we have in this country a tradition that you are free to do what you like so long as you are not causing harm to others. And so you might have understood restrictions on banning tobacco advertising if you thought that it was going to be seen by people who hadn't sorted out and who would be sinisterly influenced by seeing that advertising even though they weren't looking for it. You might accept that argument. But what is put forward by plain packaging is that people will not be able to look at these brands even though they have actively chosen to see them by asking to have the cabinet in the shop opened, by taking them home and looking at them in their own private spaces. Mr Speaker, it's said that hard cases make bad law. It is a hard case. Nobody wants to defend the tobacco industry, but the principles behind New Zealand's tradition of property rights, freedom to trade and the freedom to do as you damn well please so long as you're not harming anyone else are also very important. And that is why I am opposed to this bill that will have a minimal effect on smoking behaviour as demonstrated in Australia, but is a major step and eroding our tradition of property rights and freedom to trade. And that is something that every legitimate business in New Zealand and every business person listening tonight should be very, very concerned about. The ACT Party proudly opposes this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Marama Fox.